Agenda item 41, authorize a Chapter 380 Economic Development Grant Agreement with ESPN Productions Inc. in consideration of bringing teams from the Big 10, Big 12, or Conference USA to play in an annual bowl game at the Cotton Bowl Stadium in Fair Park in December 2018 and December 2019, pursuant to the City of Dallas Public-Private Partnership Program, not to exceed $300,000. This item will require a 3/4 vote.
Thank you. Ms. Grayson, I'll entertain a motion. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Griggs?
Thank you, Mayor. Just for the record, could staff indicate the reason for the 3/4 vote, or the attorney's office?
Mr. Johnson can probably do it. What?
Or anyone's open.
Guys, it's not that complicated. It's an economic incentive for jobs, and that we have to do it.
Courtney Pogue, the reason why it requires a 3/4 vote, because it's in a non-targeted area, a non-conforming project. Non-conforming in the sense that it does not create any jobs, nor has it met the minimum investment requirement under the current Chapter 380 policy for the City of Dallas.
Thank you. I'll be opposing this. I think this is an issue that we've talked about before with the money going to ESPN Productions. This is just some, to me, corporate welfare, and this money could be much better spent on other issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kingston?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is redirecting people's water bill money to ESPN. So you've got some flowery wording in the items that's listed on your agenda, but it's really just taking the water bill money of poor people and giving it to ESPN. So here again, I don't. We fix streets, we provide police, we provide fire protection, we regulate land use. We do creative things when they make sense. We try to, because other levels of government leave us with no choice but to help with education, to care for the homeless, to provide mental health services. We do all that stuff. This is not an example of a creative solution to an intractable municipal problem. This is an example of corporate welfare from a source that is supposed to go to economic development. And when people ask, Mr. Carraway asks all the time, when will District 4 receive economic development opportunities? Here's an example of money that might just as well be used in his district, and I fail to understand. There's another issue, too. Flooding money into college football is really hurting university education in the United States, and it's one of the drivers of inflation that has made tuition unaffordable for so many young people. This is part of the student debt problem in the United States, is municipalities like ours or states like Texas that give enterprise funds for this kind of thing. You're hurting students with this. This is not a good use of money on any level. Third thing, even if you deeply believe that spending public money on sporting events is somehow beneficial for the economy, it's not. I mean, you should get over that. But if you do believe that, if you're a huge football fan, you should understand the level of the games we're producing with this bowl and understand that it's a crime against the bowl system. The teams that get to go to this bowl shouldn't be bowl eligible. So even if you're a football fan, you're actually hurting football if you're supporting this game. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Kleiman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As many of you know, I've ranted against spending like this in the Film Commission and other wasteful uses, but I do appreciate that staff went back and reduced our exposure here. So just for the record, I'm not a jock sniffer, so I'll be holding my nose and voting yes.
Thank you. Mr. Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm still laughing at Lee's comment, sorry. I'm in support of this motion. I think when it originally came up to quality of life, I don't think the contract was good. However, I think the Sports Commission and the folks they worked with and staff did a good job. And here's the reason. The reality of it is we have a programming issue at Fair Park, so it's investment spending. In our worst year of actual attendance, our gate count, what we received, or not gate count, our revenue that we received in parking and in concession revenue to the city was roughly $95,000. And Parks can tell me if I'm off a smidge. So now the contract, is roughly $150,000. So our delta is $55,000 if we have the worst year we possibly have. So if in 2 years we come back and just for whatever reason it's my alma mater versus Toledo State and 5 people show up, we're out $110,000 in 2 years on a $2-point-some-odd billion budget. I think it's worth the investment, and especially because of the bars and the restaurants over there. If you take all the stuff about economic impact and you just take that out of the mix, these are people who are being paid to work that game. There's people who are going to benefit in development in the restaurants, et cetera. And if the average attendance before this, so if the announced attendance in our worst year was 20,000, but the average attendance is 36,000, 35,597, we make a profit. And so I think it's worth giving these folks a shot again. Yes, we'd like a better bowl game, but we also have to pony up more. So if the worst thing we have is Toledo State, no offense to Toledo State, but we make a profit, then we win. So I think it's in any business, if you invest in your business and you can get an ROI on it, that's a win. So I'm in support of this for that reason. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Felder?
Yes, I'd like to have staff come up to give me some information. Willis, Daniel.
Good morning.
Good morning. So how did this proposal come about, and what do you see as an economic benefit not only to Fair Park, but the surrounding community?
Willis Winters, Park and Recreation Department. So this was the original proposal that was being renewed was an annual stipend through the 380 program of about $400,000 to ESPN for the game. When we briefed this to the park board earlier this year, late last year and earlier this year, and into the Quality of Life Committee earlier this year in March, they sent us away, told us to come back with a better deal for the city that reduced the city stipend from $400 down and to introduce funding source from the Tourism Public Improvement District and/or Visit Dallas. So the deal that has been brought today is the city stipend is reduced from $400 to $175,000, and then the TPID will make up the rest, based on an annual attendance of 35,000. Then if they bring in more people, TPID will pay more. If they bring in less people, TPID will pay ESPN less.
So once again, how does it benefit Fair Park and the surrounding community?
The average attendance from the last 4 years has been about 28,000, just under 28,000 for the game, and the average annual economic impact for the last 4 years has been $8.9 million.
Courtney, can you come to the microphone, please? So typically, the Chapter 380 grant, can you tell us typically what that grant is used for, and does this fit within the parameters of the normal usage of the 380 grant?
Typically, our Chapter 380 grant program or public-private partnership program is geared toward economic development, for job creation, and investment in the city of Dallas.
And in your opinion, does this particular use fit that definition and that purpose?
Under our current policy, the actual grant does not meet the conforming requirements of the current policy.
Thank you. So let me say this. We have a lot of budgetary concerns and issues in the city of Dallas. We have with regard to the number of homeless that are out there on the streets, to the number of businesses that would need economic development money in order to start their business and create jobs. This particular project, it happens to be in District 7, which is my district. I represent the area. So I want to say this. It does not meet the economic development guidelines of creating jobs. And so with that said, I will not be supporting this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Narvaez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be opposing this motion. The residents, I did a really good poll of my district and lots of community meetings, and this item kept coming up, and the District 6 residents are overwhelmingly opposed to this spending. I agree with my colleague, Mr. Felder. I think that we can do something much better with these funds in order to do real job creation and not just a one-time football game for an average of 28,000 people to attend. I think with this kind of money, we can be investing in other types of events or that would actually create real and permanent jobs for people here in the city of Dallas that would attract way more over time than just 28,000 people on average spending lots of money in the area, in hotels, and in the entire city of Dallas. So with that, I will be opposing this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Grayson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say how much discussion the Quality of Life Committee had on this. It came before us twice. We discussed it extensively. We directed staff to go back and reduce the amount that we were giving ESPN. We went from $800,000 for 2 years to $300,000 for 2 years, and potentially less if they don't give us what we said we need to have. One of the reasons that I was going to support this, and it's clearly not going to pass, but one of the reasons I was going to support this was all of the monies that the City of Dallas has invested in the Cotton Bowl over the years to maintain it, to upgrade it, and it sits empty most of the time. So it seems that for a minimal investment, we could have an event there that is going to bring people in and enable us to use a facility that is underused, that we keep putting money into. So like I said, I think this is not going to pass, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about why the Quality of Life Committee eventually said, let's move this contract forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we did spend an inordinate amount of time, and I think we got to a better sweet spot in terms of the investment. Well, why should we continue to do the game? I think it's simple because we're going to have the only college football game on during that time slot. We're not talking about some lower echelon, cable television station. We're talking about channel 1602 on the AT&T UVerse, which is ESPN1 for those of you that keep scoring the college game. And so that's big time. You're talking about $150,000 basically for a marketing program for the city of Dallas for about 4 hours, not to mention the marketing slots that advertise the fact that that game is coming. Now, granted, I have not been satisfied with the level or the actual the game itself. I think we can certainly improve, and I think we have a good opportunity to do that. But we need to stay in this game for a couple of more years to put ourselves in that benefit. Willis has clearly said that it's an 8.9 economic benefit. He said there's an average of 28,000 fans. What was the high attendance and the low attendance, just for full disclosure, during the last 2, 3, 5 years?
Council member, the highest attendance was 2013, Oklahoma State, Purdue. We had 48,000 people.
Okay.
And the lowest attendance was in 2015, Washington, Southern Miss, 20,200.
Okay. And I think last year we had a lower than average.
It was about,
rain,
it was just slightly higher than that, 20,500.
Really challenging rain day. Okay. All right. Well, here's what this means in terms of economic benefit. It not only does it put people to work at Fair Park, Colleen, but it also, in the hotels and the banquet halls, these people are having all kinds of special activities, alumni events, and so forth. You know, you're putting people into hotel rooms. You're also spending money in the restaurants. That's sales tax that comes back to the city of Dallas. You've got rent-a-cars. People fly into the airport. So you've got a lot of different things at work that are very, very beneficial. It keeps Dallas in the game, too. I really believe fervently that within a couple of years we'll have a chance to move this up a little higher. Otherwise, if we turn out the lights during the holiday season, we're really only talking about Texas OU and then the State Fair Classic, being the only two games in that stadium. So Cotton Bowl, the venerable Cotton Bowl that's been around since the 1930s, it's going to diminish in popularity and so forth. We own it. It's an asset. We've got 94,000 seats, folks. We need to put people in those seats. We need to utilize every opportunity we can to promote that stadium, continue to promote Fair Park. I think my colleague, Mr. Clayton, had it right in terms of also soccer. This gives us more exposure. We're going to have the World Cup here. Now, we don't know if we're going to have any games absolutely yet, I don't think, but there is a good chance that we will. It's a great opportunity to continue to market that asset, and I regret that my colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Caraway, is not here. He's always been a strong advocate for Fair Park. But, colleagues, I urge you to redirect your thoughts. Think about $150,000 for a marketing program. We throw away more money in City Hall in T-shirts and plastic cups and pens and pencils and knickknacks and keychains every year than $150,000. And you know I'm telling the truth. All that stuff is landfill material. But this is a real opportunity to put Dallas, Texas on TV 4 hours, and everybody knows it's Dallas, not Arlington, but Dallas, Texas during the Christmas and New Year's season. So I urge you to vote for this. I just think it's a huge economic mistake. It's a huge failure on our part if we don't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
Well, I guess on a college football player, I'm going to support it. And even though some of the colleagues don't understand the math, economic development. Number one, Courtney, you said we do not have a policy. This is a policy that we just brought up for the 380 grant. Will you come to the mic? And I think that we're in a process trying to redo economic development policy. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
And this policy right here, I think it was a resolution that came about, a resolution for this particular policy?
For the Chapter 380, it came about roughly about 2016. The current Chapter 380 policy expires December 31st of 2018.
It expires when?
December 31st of this year.
This year, right. Okay. So it will expire in the next couple months or so, right?
That is correct.
So therefore, if we defer this for a couple months, then we would not have a policy. Is that a fair statement?
If we do not renew the Chapter 380 policy or public-private partnership program policy by December 31st, 2018, we will not have a public-private partnership policy.
Okay. When is the game this would be played? When is the game?
It's typically December 26th, 27th, somewhere.
So we miss about 2 or 3 days, right? Yes. Okay. Now, the Cotton Bowl, how many games is played in the Cotton Bowl per year? Football games, soccer, how many games we have?
Of course, we start out the year every year with the Dallas Cup, so we host about 8 to 10 matches every day. Every year, including the opening ceremonies, and then we have a couple of soccer games during the summer. We do the high school prep football showcase right before the fair. Texas OU, Grambling, Prairie View, and then the bowl game itself.
Okay.
And then we have other stuff that's not as big.
Okay. Could we play more games in the Cotton Bowl? Could we have more games?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Question: when people come to the Cotton Bowl for football or soccer, is there an economic impact to the city of Dallas, Courtney? When they play there, what is the economic impact? Do we have economic impact data that says when soccer, or football, when they use the Cotton Bowl, there is an economic impact, right?
Yes, sir. We know the economic impact of just the Dallas Cup is right about $18 million a year.
Right. So we do have an economic impact. And so with an economic impact, that is part-time job. There are some jobs is created when we use the Cotton Bowl. Is that a fair statement?
There's a lot of jobs either created or retained as a result of events in the stadium. I mean, you have all kinds of services that are required: parking attendants, concession workers, security, novelties, everything, all the services that support the games.
Okay. Do some of that revenue that come from the game help to do repairs, improvement to the Cotton Bowl or to the Fair Part?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase?
Some of the revenues from the football game, do some of that money go back to the Fair Part for repairs or whatever?
No, sir. They go back to the general fund. But
go back to the general fund. Okay, thank you. They go back to the general fund, right? So they go back to the taxpayers.
Right.
To the taxpayers.
Yes, sir. And this is a general fund expenditure out of the park department budget.
Right. So they do go back to the taxpayers. So the taxpayer kind of benefit to fix our roads, our streets, and improvement because it go to the general fund, right? It's not a line item that say to go to the street, but it go to the general fund. It help our coffers to help.
Yes, sir. It goes back to the general fund.
So go back to the general fund. So I guess, Courtney, this policy that we have now is going to expire in December. Do you think this policy could be amended? Do you think it should be amended, in your opinion? With the statement you just heard, the money is going back to the general fund, it's going back to the coffers, it's going back to the taxpayer. It's helping your water bill. We're not robbing the cradle to invest in this football game.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so therefore, we have a policy thing, and we are the policymakers, right? And we can change policy, right? Is that a correct statement? We are the policymakers. And we're looking at a couple of days that we can change this. And is anybody from ESPN here? Could we come down, please?
This is Brant Ringler with
Frank,
ESPN.
okay.
Brant.
Okay. And Billy, you stop my clock. I'll be through in about 30 seconds. When do you make a decision what team would play in the Cotton Bowl?
We always make the decision, it's usually the first week in December. The championship weekend's on Saturday, and then all the bowls select their teams on Sunday.
On Sunday, so that's how many days before the game starts? I think, what is the date of the game this year?
26th. It's about 3 weeks before the game.
3 weeks before the game. And how do you make a decision? We got the top 20, top 15, who going to what bowls? How do you say, here is Dallas, we want the best team come here, the best team going to travel, how they're going to be an impact to the city? I don't just want anyone to go there because you don't want to be showing this on millions of people. You got a team, not going to give
There's several factors, sir. One, we're tied to conference tie-ins. So we have relationships with the Big 12, the Big 10, Conference USA, and others. And it's up to those conferences to meet their requirements in qualifying enough teams. So if they have qualified enough teams, we will go in a selection order. And at that order, if there's more than one team to choose from, we'll be able to choose one of those two or three teams. That's on one side, and then, of course, the other side as well. We also always look for trying to find a team that is closer in regional aspects so they can easily drive here, bring more people to the city, and be a part. So there's several factors that go into that.
Okay. Colleagues, I know it's 3/4 vote. Some people said they're not going to support it. I'm going to support it, but I think it's an economic development, economic opportunity for the city of Dallas when you got college kids come here. Some of those college kids who play football is on scholarship. They can't afford to go to college, and that's how they get their education. And fortunately, I was on a scholarship 4 years. And I was blessed, but when you start turning down kids to get a better education because they can't play and have an opportunity to play, we are kind of killing ourselves. We're talking about higher education. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adkins. Mr. Broad next. Want to say something?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Atkins and other council members who talked through this issue. Earlier, I think Councilmember Felder asked Courtney a question about conformance with the current policy, and I think Councilmember Atkins hit it right on the head. To the extent that we're reviewing the current policy, and with respect to this particular item, the only reason that it is requiring a three-quarters vote is because it does not meet the minimum eligibility. But we do believe, as stated in the memorandum, that it does present a unique economic development benefit to that area and to the city. And I know that's been talked about, but I wanted to just clarify. Courtney was not asking whether or not it was something that the Economic Development Department supported, but whether or not it was in conformance. And by the nature of the fact that it did not meet the minimum, that is why it requires a three-quarters vote. I think it's consistent with, other efforts, not just to market the city and bring things to Fair Park, but I think it is a good use of resources. And as requested earlier, Council asked us to go back and lower the general fund participation. Staff did that. I think this issue of the nonconformance was not raised specifically at that time, at least as I don't recall it was. But we've done what Council's asked us to do. I'm hopeful that Council will support staff as well as the Parks and Recs Department on this effort, and look forward to the review and discussion of modifying our policies to be in conformance with something similar that does not take away from the economic benefit in certain areas just because of certain issues that I guess have been established prior. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gates.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions and comments. One, thank Mrs. Grayson for, we did talk about this extensively in quality of life. We discussed the challenges with this. We had some compromises that were involved, and other people came to the table. We had a lot of discussion. I think everybody at this table wants to see the Cotton Bowl successful. We would like better games, but we understand the current circumstances. I think this illustrates mistakes Dallas made in the past about not going after that big stadium that we don't have in Dallas. And so now we're but we've been pouring money into Cotton Bowl, which is a little bit interesting that this council, I think all of us and previous councils have continued to invest in the Cotton Bowl, but yet we then don't want to entertain ideas when the Cotton Bowl wants to be used. So I also want to thank Mr. Clayton. He illustrated that it's not like a lot of money in the coffers, but it does. We're going to essentially break even, and it's an opportunity to, as Mr. Callahan said, showcase the Cotton Bowl on that particular day, and also revitalize, have activity in Fair Park and South Dallas. What area, I would like staff to answer this, what area do you think benefits from this event the most? Is it downtown? Is it the uptown? Is it Fair Park? I'm guessing it's not District 13. So, who's working at those concession stands and those parking lots, and who is who's benefiting? When you think this benefits, what part of Dallas benefits from this?
I think the whole city as a whole benefits. When you think about the fact that Fair Park, the Cotton Bowl, and the city of Dallas are being nationally televised and constantly out there in the commercials and everything, and a viewership of 2.2 million people watching the game, I think it benefits the city as a whole, all the restaurants, hotels, all the services that are needed for staging of the games. There's a whole week-long of festivities and other programs leading up to the games that also involve the team. Sometimes they do things at our rec center, so the kids are benefiting. But also a lot of the services required for the game. A lot of the companies, parking companies, security companies that provide services to our events at Fair Park employ people from the surrounding community and around Fair Park. So I think everyone benefits.
So there's some temporary jobs that are, and they're usually impacting those that live closest to the park?
They're year-round jobs because,
they are year-round.
Because they're hiring people to service events at Fair Park and other venues that there may be events at, where they have contracts as well. So.
And where do you think they live?
A lot of them live around the Fair Park area. So.
Okay. Okay, the other question is, if the city doesn't, we decide not to support this, what happens to this game? Is there options, or is that, are you, sir, you were from ESPN? Or?
Yeah, my name is Brant Ringler, the executive director of the game.
Executive director
of the Heart of Dallas Bowl.
Oh, the Heart. So you're at the Bowl, not the...
ESPN owns and operates the game.
Oh, okay.
So I'm an ESPN employee.
Okay, so what would happen? I'm just...
Well, we're currently in a 6-year cycle with the Bowl, so we would continue to work with the city to discuss our future options and find out what those are. There is the option of looking at other facilities to have the games, but we're so far into the year right now. Hopefully we can continue to play here is what we would like to do. And one thing I'd like to mention that is as an underlying theme to our game and something that we're getting ready to announce here in the near future is kind of an all-in mentality towards honoring first responders. We've done that in the past with honoring them, but there's no better city for us to say thank you across the nation to our first responders in light of what's occurred here in the city over the last 3 years ago. We feel like this is the place for us to do a full thank you to our first responders, and we will use this bowl game to do so as well.
So you've done that in the past, and you plan to continue that?
We've done that as an underlying theme, but we're going to ramp that up.
Okay.
All first responders will continue to be able to attend the game with their families for free.
All right. Thank you. I think those are all the questions I had right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas hasn't spoken. Mr. Atkins, if you can jump off.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Gates brought up an interesting point, and I was thinking, employment is definitely important in terms of residents that live around the Fair Park, but what type of, maybe from the past and then going forward, what type of incentives can we get to, can the teams come and do some things with the high schools, or have they done things of that nature? Let me start there. What have they done in the past during the time that the teams come in, the way, some of the kids that live in the community can get a chance to,
Yeah, we worked with several different nonprofit organizations. The Heart of Dallas Foundation we worked with, and they have several different charities that we worked through them on. City Square being a large organization that we worked with and actually had players go out to their facility and help feed people. We've done also charity program where the food shelters, we've had the players go out there as well, and we will continue to do that.
Have you worked with or coordinated anyway with the State Fair Texas organization? I know they have a community engagement director, Dr. Francois Booker-Drew, who works real close with the neighborhood associations and the organizations in that area. So have you worked with the State Fair Texas organization?
I'm not aware of working directly with them, but we're more than open to discussing working with them and any other organization that would be interested in doing so.
Yeah, I think they, through their community engagement department, they have a good touch on the pulse of the residents, of community-based neighborhood organizations, and so I think that would be a good step going forward.
We'll definitely would like to look into that.
Based on everything I've heard, I'm not on the committee, but I respect the work of the committee. I respect, especially the fact that we've heard this before. It went back to committee, and several of those on the committee have said, and when we talk about $150,000, we y'all know, you've been around here, you know what we vote for money to. And I see this beyond, quote unquote proper use of these funds. Come on, let's be real about it. We can look and we can make adjustments to things that we feel are to our advantage. Here's a great opportunity for a minimum amount of investment for Dallas to be highlighted on that day. I've been to the game at least the past couple of years. Look forward to going again this year from Fuller Hill because it's a great opportunity for us to highlight the city, our hotels, many other things. We talk about marketing Dallas and highlighting Dallas. The Fair Park is in southern Dallas, so I see it as a benefit. So I'll be voting supportive.
Thank you. Everybody's in the second round, so let me weigh in for a moment. First of all, I'm not going to reiterate the math that Mr. Clayton laid out. It's correct, and we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars net. So this is a cultural and a symbolic decision here we're making. I want everybody to be clear that if this does not pass, the majority of the City Council supports this game and supports ESPN's right to do this and partnership to do this. When I think of what our jobs are, one of the jobs we have is to make sure that the City of Dallas is put in the best light throughout this country. And this is the most cost-efficient way to have millions of people see how Dallas honors its first responders. Thank you for saying you're going to dial this up. I know some of your plans out there, and I know it's not the right time to announce that, but we would be proud to support our police and our firefighters in a way that you're thinking about doing it. It's a brilliant idea. So we've got that issue. But then we've got the other issue about, are we going to support Fair Park or not? We're going to discuss this in the coming months. And I think, as I said before, that we're all united that we want this 365. We'd sure like it to be December 26th, one of the days we have tens of thousands of people coming to Fair Park and visiting from all over the country, from Ohio or other places, to see Fair Park and see South Dallas Fair Park and the contribution and the progress that we're making. We need to be proud of South Dallas Fair Park. And every opportunity we have, I'm going to be voting to bring people in, not to keep them out. So this notion that somehow spending money to broadcast a football game is a bad use of money has some underlying whispers and whistles, okay, there that is not correct. Sports is good. Sports is good for this city, and we have had the Doak Walkers, the Roger Staubachs, the Joe Theismanns, the Doug Flutys play in those that Cotton Bowl at that time, and it can be done again, but not if we don't want to as a council. If we decide, hey, you know what, sports isn't a good way to spend money, okay? It's not going to happen. But right now, I just want you to know that the majority of the City Council supports this, that we support Fair Park, and we support South Dallas Fair Park in trying to make this happen. We've got a convoluted rule here that I'm concerned about, but thank you, everybody that's going to vote positive for Fair Park and for South Dallas Fair Park in this. Thank you. That's my 2 cents, and I'll shut up. Mr. Felder's next.
So, I'm listening to the comments and, carefully evaluating, especially what you just said, Mayor. There's more than one way to skin a cat. So let me ask a question. Willis, would you come to the mic, please? Have you explored private sponsorship of this game?
I think that in our discussions, Mr. Felder, with Visit Dallas and the Tourism Public Improvement District and with ESPN, there's a desire to put in place a strong local board, just as the Cotton Bowl Classic has a strong local board that generates private funding and corporate and sponsorship funding. There's a desire to work together to achieve what you're talking about. And I think there's a renewed commitment to this game to start that process with this funding plan that's in place. And if I could add one thing that has not maybe been made clear, the stipend, this game stipend of $150,000 a year for 2 years, $300,000 total, is in our park department general fund budget. It is not a grant that is eligible for other uses. So this is in our general fund budget along with the stipends for a Prairie View Grambling game and the Texas OU game.
So, my concern, it hasn't changed. I think that using public dollars for the game, and I love football just like anybody else. So because I don't support using public dollars to support this game, doesn't mean I don't like football. And once again, the Cotton Bowl is in District 7. I represent District 7. Nobody else wants it better than I do. So the other thing I'd like to say is that we are on the precipice of change with the new bidder that is going to be managing Fair Park. So I think with patience, Fair Park is going to be all that it can be. We have to make sure that we use taxpayer dollars prudently. We can't just spend it willy-nilly. Yes, I hear my colleagues talking about, well, $300 is not this, it's $300 is not that. Depends on how you spend that $300,000 and who needs that $300,000. We have a big issue with homelessness, and that would go a long way in dealing with homelessness and other issues. And so I look at it from that perspective. So once again, I do not support this, have nothing against football, nothing against the use of the Cotton Bowl and Fair Park. I want to see it flourish. And again, we're on the precipice of change. All we have to do is be patient. We have a bidder that has global experience in doing just what we're talking about doing. And so the Economic Development Department is retooling, and that won't come until next year. So we just have to be patient. In the meantime, we're working through all of the processes to get the new public-private operator at Fair Park that has the experience in what we're trying to do here. So I think my vote is definitely on target. I think we need to be patient and allow this new operator to bring this to fruition and allow them to do what they do. They've done the Super Bowl, they've done the Pro Bowl, they've done the California State Fair, and I can go on and on and on. They're even in Singapore. They're across the world. What is the problem with being patient and waiting for them to do what they need to do? That's why we're doing the bid to do a public-private partnership, for this very reason. Thank you.
Mr. Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I address Mr. Felder, please? Mr. Felder, Kevin, may I ask you a question, please? So I appreciate what you said, and I wanted to go because I wanted to hear your perspective because you are the council person who represents the area. And forgive me if I heard you wrong, so just clarify, is your biggest concern, being the representative for the area, the fact that the stipend is coming out of the 380, or is it just the fact of any money going towards incentivizing someone to go for a game in Fair Park?
Somebody has to get off so I can speak.
Ms. Gates, would you?
Sorry.
So, again, I think I made it clear. Let me make it clear again. I don't have anything against football. Don't have anything against the bowl. What I do have something against is using our public dollars in this manner. First of all, they're not earmarked for this particular purpose because they don't create jobs. And I think the term jobs, permanent jobs. The seasonal jobs are one thing, but permanent jobs, I believe, is one of the focuses of the 380 grant.
Yeah. Mr. Clayton's money.
Okay, so here's the reason, Kevin, here's the reason I asked the question. Here's my concern on it. Because of what we're getting in parking and revenue, our worst year, our delta, what we lost was roughly $50,000. To me, if we do this and it never improves, we spent $50,000 a year to keep the lights on December 26th. Here's the reason I asked the question. I understand exactly what your point is and about applying money. I totally get that. I'm looking at it from the perspective of, okay, on December 26th, that keeps, the elbow, or not the elbow room, all the bars and all that. That's another way they make money. That lifts all boats because, people are making money who are working down there. But I absolutely understand your perspective. If this money, let's just say the delta's $50K, just for easy math. If that money would have been in the general fund versus Chapter 380, would you have had the same opinion as a representative for the district?
I think he's answered your question.
Okay.
I think he's.
Okay, fair enough. I guess here's my point, and then I'll get off the microphone. I think it's important. I think moving forward today that we do this for a lot of reasons. And we may have a disagreement on that, and I respect that, and I think you articulated that very well. If it was an issue of doing it on the 380 on principle, then I say we move this thing to the general fund because I have a council office budget that I'll gladly give to the area just to support this game because I think it's that important, because I think that's a use of money I would much rather use it on an area that we need to keep the lights on than let something go that we're not going to get back anytime soon. So that's why I asked the question, Mr. Felder, is I would be, if you would be open to doing it in the general fund, and we could delay it, I would move it to the general fund, and I would give up my council budget just to get the game to come through.
You want me to respond?
Thank you. No.
Would you be open to that, please? How about that?
We got a mic issue here, okay? Ms. Gates, if you can just step off. Just yes or no. Mr. Felder. Mr. Felder, yes or no? He said, are you open to that? Just you.
No, I'm pretty firm in what I said.
Okay, great. All right, Mr. Callahan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think the question was if the money come out of general funds rather than 380 was the question, not whether you were in favor of it or not. Anyway, the gentleman from ESPN, if you'd come to the microphone, I have a specific question. How much, or what is the value of the marketing dollars that ESPN will spend both on commercials leading up to and then during the telecast? Could you give us kind of a ballpark figure of what that range of dollars would look like?
Yeah, we usually use a third-party organization to evaluate, such as how many times Dallas's name comes up, how many times it's mentioned, all the pre-promotion, things like that, all the newspapers, internet, things like that. And usually at a minimum, it's $10 million in exposure value.
So, I'm not a math major, but I did get an MBA, but somewhere along the way I learned in the calculation that if I spend $150,000 and I get a $10 million benefit, that's pretty good. So and I thank you for that. And I know this is huge because it's 1602. It's not one of the lower echelon channels of ESPN. We're not talking about some of these other no-name sports channels that you got to go find. You're talking about the real time in your living room. So that's the thing I want to accentuate. Well, colleagues, I want to lay it out and just keep it all real. I want to tell you, we have 10 votes. If we had 11 votes, we win the day.
No, we don't. We have to have 12.
12. Well,
it's not.
Mr. Carraway's not here.
No, I know, but it's 12.
Still has to
We
be
have
12.
to have 12.
Okay.
It's members.
12 members. Of members. Oh, okay. Well.
Okay.
Never mind.
Thank you, Mr. Atkins.
Yes. Number one, it don't take a rocket science to figure this out. Question: ESPN, TC, we do not have a marketing department for the city of Dallas. Is that correct? You know, someone who market the city of Dallas go out and say, "Hey, here the city of Dallas, come to us." Do we have a marketing budget to market the city of Dallas? A department?
No, we do not.
I think that's why we need one. I mean, we need to find out how do we market the city as a whole. And if we had a marketing budget, we could have sponsors who come in to sponsor this game. We would not be having this a discussion right now, because we can figure out what corporation can help subsidize this game. Number one, ESPN, how many, if the game had the right team, how many viewers would you probably think would see this game? How many, you look at how many people watch the TV, watch the game, how many people you think might watch this game?
Well, last year was 2.5 million, so if you're going off of just last year's game and you feel like there's teams that are greater than that, then that number should go up. We're on the 26th this year. We're unopposed by any other game. It's a 4-hour window on ESPN's #1 channel. So if you're a college football fan, it's 26th. A lot of people are still at home. For the holidays, they're going to watch TV. And
so if you, an ideal crystal ball, if you think it's a good team, a good matchup, what do you think? I mean, I ain't gonna hold you to it, but what do you think the viewing hours?
We were happy with 2.5 million. We thought that was a really good number last year, and it showed an increase over the years in the past too. So we think that number is going to continue to grow like college football does. So, you're looking at when you do 3 million, that's a good number as well.
Okay. So getting to the point is, again, if we had a marketing department and we had market and advertise the city dollars, with $350,000 would be a good number TC budget, to say we're going to market the city dollars and we're going to get 3,000 people hits to come in. I'm just trying to figure out, since we do not have a marketing department, how can we use this deal to market? Okay.
Well, I wouldn't recommend on the fly using and reallocating these funds. I did not go further to say we do not have a marketing department, but Visit Dallas is the entity that markets the city of Dallas. Right. And I think using their efforts, along with obviously whether it's the council or our own public information office and the things that we do for good measure, really market the city. And I think we are advocates all the time. But I didn't clarify that Visit Dallas is the official connection and partner with the city to do that.
Okay, so why would we do this here? And I think that since this did not come through the economic development department, it did came through. I'll put a motion. Let's defer this. And when is the deadline we need to come back? Is there a deadline that we need to make a decision before the game? When is the deadline? What is the deadline? What is the drop deadline that we need to come back?
Yeah, there's not a specific deadline. What we're trying to do is we have a major announcement that we would like to make here in the near future, around the game. Okay. And
well, let me do it this way. Let me make a motion to defer this until the city manager in the near future when we feel like it's close enough and try to bring it up.
We got a motion, and we have a second.
Okay.
Any discussion on that item?
What date?
Okay. I didn't hear the date.
Do you have a date?
No, I'm trying to get a date. I'm trying to ask the city manager, when, getting with ESPN to find out when do we need to come back. I don't know. I'm trying to ask a date certain.
I think, look, here, let's just be honest. We vote no today.
Well, we got a motion to defer.
Okay? So even if we come back January 15th, okay, and defer it, there's a chance to kind of keep this thing alive.
Right.
So pick a date. September?
30 days. Let's do 30 days.
45 days.
45 days. Okay, whatever that is. Okay?
September 12th. September 12th.
Okay, September 12th. That's the motion. You got a second? Okay. Do all these people want to talk on this?
No.
Okay, please. Thank you, Mr. Atkins. Ms. Gates.
Okay, preparing for that date, I think it'd be helpful if this is coming out of the parks money, correct? I know park is general fund budget, right?
That is exactly correct.
So
yes,
if it's parks money, is it pilot money at all?
No, ma'am.
It's not pilot money.
Strictly
so it's not
general fund budget money like our other game
It's not anything to do with water.
That's correct.
So it's pilot. So why is it categorized as 380?
Should say that.
Because I thought private-public partnership was pilot money.
That's the way we make grants as far as economic development or in regards to parks for this bowl game. It's under 380 policy. It's not 380 money.
Okay, it's not 380 money. So, but it's the policy. So how much money, can I ask, Daniel, what other bowl games are played there? We play the Texas OU and then the Grambling State, right? And then there's a third, right?
No.
Okay, so how does Grambling State, how do we give money to Grambling State?
We don't have an agreement with Grambling Prairie View. That was done through a council resolution. The last time that we did the agreement, the stadium agreement with the schools, Texas OU, as well as the State Fair of Texas and the city, there was a clause in there that also provided funding for Grambling Prairie View.
So what do we fund them, though? What is
Texas OU splits $1 million, and Grambling Prairie View splits $150,000.
So, but that doesn't go through the economic development policy.
No,
so why does this trigger that to go through the economic development policy?
I'm not sure why it was set up this way. The original contract for the bowl, when it was the Ticket City Bowl, after the game moved to Arlington, it was structured through a Chapter 380 grant.
So, and this is Park's money. Does Park give any other money to any other entities and do you have to follow the economic development policy for that?
No, this is the only thing that we do through the Chapter 380.
Through it, but was it categorized the last time as a 380
Yes,
when
it
the
was.
last car? Okay. That's a little confusing. I mean, it's just ironic that we've stated we want to help activities there. We've gone out and we've RFP'd. We think Spectrum. I'm assuming, I know that's a separate contract, but they are pleased of any activities that are currently happening there, correct? Have you gotten any input?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
With the RFP going out regarding the management of Fair Park, was there any input in that discussion that the current activities is not something they wanted to participate in the future? Or could that even jeopardize that contract if if this game goes away?
I think they're aware that there's stipends in the Park Department budget for the games themselves and the bowl game, as well as cultural affairs stipends that are also paid out.
So cultural affairs stipends. So out of the Parks Department, we incentivize and keep cultural activities happening at the Fair Park.
Well, there's stipends that were in the OCA budget to support the cultural affairs or the museums out there. Those got moved in. They got consolidated with the Park
and those
Department
don't follow the
budget in preparation.
360.
They do not.
All right. I think there's some cleaning up that needs to be done and deciding. I mean, because I think we've given the Parks money in the Parks Department so that they could, until we had this management agreement, so they could encourage this kind of activity. And now we're saying we don't want that. So it's very perplexing. So I'm going to support this so we can work these issues out before we come back to vote on it.
Mr. Griggs. Mr. Atkins, your light's still on. Thank you. Mr. Griggs.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be opposing. This is just a delay tactic for them to come up with a way to pass this with just a majority, move some money around, taxpayer money around. I think the game's welcome here. ESPN, please come here. Just pay for it yourselves, please. That's what I'd like to see. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Kleiman.
Yeah, I mean, colleagues, do the math. I just don't even see how delaying this would help. I mean, I think we lost. So, thank you.
Thank you. A record vote for Mr. Atkins' motion. Yes, there was, Mr. Medrano.
Please start voting. 13 have voted. 13 have voted. 14 have voted. Voting in favor, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Medrano, Councilmembers McGue, Thomas, Gates, Clayton, Mayor Rawlings, Councilmembers Callahan, Grayson, Atkins. Voting no, Councilmember Felder, Kleiman, Narvaez, Kingston, Griggs. Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Caraway is absent. The motion to defer passes.
Thank you. Next item.
Agenda item 42 was deleted on the addendum.